Today we have, to begin with, a panel called The Evolution of Community. It's moderated by Manu, and we've got Amy, Vanessa, Lindsey, and Elena. Goodness, what a panel. So I'm going to go ahead and get off the screen here and say hello to our panelists. Hello, good morning.
Hello, hello.
Y'all ready?
Hello.
If you're ready, the floor is yours. Have fun.
All right. Yeah, hello, everyone. Super glad to see you all.
Happy Monday.
Oh,
Happy
wow.
Monday. All right, let's get started. I'm super happy to be part of this with all of you guys. This is amazing. I know that you guys are building communities within all the different projects that you're part of. So yeah, let's get the conversation started. The first question that I had was, when your organization got started, what were the characteristics of the initial community members? Where did they live, and how is it now? For instance, Bitcoin got started from a cyberpunk email list, and now people from all over the country, from all over the world, are part of this Bitcoin community. So yeah, I wanna get started with that. Let's, Amy, you wanna start with that?
Yeah, actually, you know what'd be cool is if we can go in like order of like community maturity. I think that would be such a cool evolution to see.
That's true. That's true. Let's do that. Let's do that. That sounds like a good
Not
idea.
to put you on the spot, but I think Lindsey or Vanessa, I think it's Foundation, Celo, Electric Coin / Maker Foundation.
Zcash.
Yeah.
Let's start with Zcash then. That was, I guess, the oldest one.
Was it the oldest one, or were we, I guess, around the same time? But yeah, I'm happy to start. So
Elena.
yeah, and let me know if my mic isn't coming in very well. I'm currently in a apartment lobby. So yeah, I think it's a great question because it gets to this kind of crux of like, what is a community, who counts, and then how do you join or add new people? So I really don't believe that crypto communities in particular start out with one set of characteristics. That's maybe one way in which Web3 communities are so different from Web2 communities, right? Like you can have a subreddit for cat videos, but a decentralized protocol for virtual money is like quite an order of magnitude different. But that said, Zcash first launched in 2016. I think it definitely has always had a well-earned reputation for attracting people interested in kind of like the bleeding edge cryptography. So zero knowledge proofs to recursive proof composition, kind of like this really heady, super crazy magic moon math. And over the years, as the community has grown and more people have kind of joined, it's I've been pleased to see Zcash kind of expand its scope from outside of the, you know, hardcore academic cryptographers to activists, people advocating for privacy and digital human rights, and also people just interested in seeing kind of like, how do you design privacy within a like regulatory or compliant framework. So I think who counts in your community is an interesting question, but I'll leave it at that because I'm curious to hear how other people's communities have evolved. But yeah, we definitely started in the crypto world, and now we're growing, and hopefully all of crypto is growing into more mainstream audiences.
Elena, before we move on, can you tell us where did the community get together? Was it on a private chat or a blog? How did it get started?
Oh yeah, the origin story of Zcash. Well, so there were 7 founding scientists who first wrote. Can you hear me? Okay, yeah. So there were 7 founding scientists who first wrote the zero coin paper, and then that became Zcash. I think like the origin story, when Zcash first launched, it was in kind of like a rented house in Boulder, Colorado. And that was like where they first launched the protocol. I should know this story better. But then I think the physical community gatherings were at ZCon, and that's organized by the Zcash Foundation. The first one was in Montreal, and the second one was in Croatia. So yeah, it's cool to get together in person, and those conferences were awesome.
All right, thank you so much, Elena. Now, I guess Amy, Maker.
Yeah, well, I guess technically Maker should have gone first. Depends on when you consider starting the community. So in 2015, the kind of paper called what used to call $E was posted on Reddit. So it was really a kind of like digital first community at first. And I wasn't there at the time when everything started. So I can only tell you kind of the myths and the readings that I've gone back to the posts. And since then, when the Maker Foundation started, it really focused on the goal of like bootstrapping the MakerDAO and the MakerDAO community. And so where we are now is crazy leap, because a lot of times people ask me like, oh, what does the community think? And that's such a hard question to answer, because within our community, we have so many groups and so many subdivisions. Like you can start from the center, which is kind of like the more protocol focused. And that's like people who are actively participating in governance, who are like keepers, vault owners, MKR holders. Even the foundation itself is like a member of this like protocol community. And then that's like, even now we have domain teams or teams that are working like inside for the DAO itself. And then we even have like contributors, and they go from like developers to like people who are creating like DAI action groups that are going out and kind of creating local economies. Then we have like a user base, which is people who are kind of more focused on like the adoption side, and kind of their main thing is how do we integrate something maybe a business is using Maker or DAI. And then you have kind of like greater DeFi people or protocols as well, like DAO to DAO. So we've got this like very full community, and that's kind of crazy to see. And I'm really excited to see actually what that looks like after that, like what's the next level there. So that's kind of where we're at with Maker and Maker Foundation.
Does that mean I'm next chronologically? Maybe.
Probably, yes.
Probably. So status, nutshell, 2017, it got established. And obviously as far as status is concerned, it really has always kind of, well, it came to be, and it continues to evolve based on its core 10 principles, which are very, very focused on, the idea of human freedoms, the idea of privacy, the idea of security, the idea of transparency, the idea of openness, all of the good stuff that we have somehow in the evolution of the internet and digital spaces have kind of forgotten that those are like the important bits that we should, build with and enjoy as users and as humans and so on. So for us, I think it's a very interesting evolution in itself, where we are seeing how the different elements of status are being used, how the communication piece is being used by groups that need that safe space to communicate in without fear of repercussion, without censorship, without being deplatformed and so on. The transaction elements, where you do want to make transactions across borders without it taking 10 days and potentially, I don't know how many fees, although fees is a thing at the moment, but you want to be able to do that without needing recipients to be part of the SWIFT network. And by the way, not a lot of people are geographically part of the giant bank SWIFT network. And then of course the exploration of the Web3 space, right? That's a very important piece, where you want to be able to, once you are in it, go for a journey around it, figure out where it is that you want to go, what makes sense for you to build, and get involved. So I think it's an ever evolving and ever, enriching experience, I want to say, just from the perspective of discovering all of this good stuff.
Amazing, Simona. Thank you. I guess now Celo.
Great. Yes.
Vanessa.
So Celo started in 2017, and then we launched in 2018. So when I joined, there was no community. But I think that the things that we did early on, like the first thing I did when I joined was create a code of conduct, and we developed community tenants and trying to create like some scaffolding. I know Elena was talking earlier about the differences between Web 2 and Web 3, but having been in tech for a while, I wanted to prevent a lot of the like negativity that I've seen in other kind of tech communities online. But I think the like most like the best example of what our community is actually a retreat that we hosted that I got to hang out with Elena at called the Prosper Retreat, which was in November before the world shut down. And we had 60 people from 20 countries. And it was this cross section of all these people who wanted to use this technology for good, especially around finance and social impact. And so a lot of our like validator community, a lot of our entrepreneurs building on Celo now were at that event. And so it was actually like 60 seeds that were planted that are now like starting to blossom. And I'm really excited to see these projects and individuals like continue to grow, but it created this like strong philosophical foundation for what Celo is and what we're trying to do, which is around prosperity, which we define as basic needs being met, people helping each other, and people growing along their unique path. And so all the projects being built on Celo kind of align to that ethos, with the goal and the technology being focused around adoption on a mobile phone. And so that's kind of like the other element or flavor is around usability and like products. And that's how actually I met Amy, because we did a lot of user research early on, and she was like, yeah, designers, research people. So we connected in Berlin and had the pleasure of working with her for a bit. And so yeah, so there's definitely this like fintech kind of social entrepreneur, and then also like products and made for mobile and phones. And yeah, like Marco, who was at Prosper, built a UBI project on Celo that is now has distributed $200,000 to over 10,000 people in 53 communities around the world. And so these folks are actually getting paid in Celo dollars every month and being able to like buy food and kind of support their families. And so it's a great example of kind of that initial seed kind of maturing.
Thank you so much, Vanessa. How about you, Lindsey? How Foundation got started and where the community was living at that time, and how is it now?
Cool. So Foundation started in 2020. We launched the end of May. I joined the day before the launch, so I got caught up to speed very quickly. But our founders had come from the DeFi space, but in their personal lives, they were really invested in the cultural space. And so they had this hunch that maybe they could put the two and two together. My background is coming more from the cultural space, auction houses, museums, galleries, working in the focusing on digital art. So we were all coming together, even as a team, I think reflected what we were trying to accomplish as a company, which was merging contemporary art and music and fashion and design with crypto. And our first attempt at that was we had this theory that we needed to abstract away a lot of the crypto elements in order to appeal to a larger audience. So we first started with this really clean product, and I was going out and talking with artists, and they were coming to Foundation, and it sort of looked like Web 2 marketplace, but it didn't function that way. It had a lot of exciting superpowers in the back end that were just hidden. And so what we learned over the last year was that the artists and creators, musicians, designers who are in our community were coming to us because they really wanted to learn about crypto. And the crypto space really wanted to get to know those creators also. So we relaunched last Wednesday, actually, which I think qualifies us as the freshest here in this group. We relaunched last Wednesday, and we're not hiding any of the crypto anymore. And it's been really cool to see the community adapt and become really sophisticated and be able to have these really fluent conversations with our engineers and challenge them and question them. And we're building much more collaboratively with our community now. So I would say we introduced ourselves in a way that almost had a roadblock, but over time figured out how to remove that roadblock so that we can really look at the technology as it is and have really powerful conversations with the creators and work with them much more collaboratively. So that's where we are now. We are very active on Discord. We're doing a little bit in Clubhouse. I don't know how I feel about that space, mixed feelings, but we're doing a happy hour there each week. Obviously very active on Twitter. But it's been really cool to see technologists and musicians and digital artists and painters and fashion designers like all come into this space and be learning together collaboratively. And that's really what we're about, is creating that intersection so everyone has a voice at the table and is helping contribute to the health of the community.
Great, thank you so much, Lindsey. Many of you said that there are sub-communities within this big community that you might have within your projects. And I'm wondering, what are the different type of tools and channels that you're using in order to nurture those different type of community members? And also, just to be mindful of the time, if you guys can also tackle the next one, which is basically how do you measure the health of your community with these different tools that you're using? Anyone wants to start with that?
I'll jump in on that.
Go on.
I think that one-on-one conversations are the most impactful way to develop and organize a community. I have my schedule is basically a list of one-on-one conversations with different community members throughout the day. And I find that that's really valuable on both ends because it helps us really dig in deeper on issues that people care about. And then with that, being attuned to all these different community members, I can help them find their common issues and weave together relationships that will allow them to feel more empowered to speak up in the more public spaces. And I find that's really important, especially for people who don't feel comfortable on Twitter or don't feel comfortable expressing themselves on Discord. So I think for me, it's less about going from 1 to 1 million. It's more about going from 1 to 2 1,000 times over to really ensure, to answer your second question, to really ensure that there's health, that people are heard and they feel connected and validated.
And I'll follow that with, this whole, because we're talking about the evolution of communities, actually, I feel that that's what Web3 is doing, is empowering individuals and communities to achieve whatever it is that they want to achieve, right? Giving them the tools and the spaces and the power to achieve those things. We no longer have that dynamic of the centralized organization that basically tells it, hey, this is the way it is, you like it, you don't, whatever. This is all about, and as far as I'm concerned, at least, it's creating those spaces where people and communities and individuals feel empowered to communicate, to find the tools that they need, to access them, to use them for whatever it is that they need them for. And it's one of those, I think we're kind of moving to this 3D way of looking at people versus we're not flat anymore. It's not that one-dimensional space. It's multifaceted and everybody has so many different sides to who they are, to what they enjoy, to what skills they have, to where they choose or what communities they choose to belong to. It's a proactive choice versus, oh, I'm born here, this is what I do, I guess I'm part of this community, right? It involves that choice. And I think, again, Web3 is about the choice and about the empowerment.
On the point of community health, Elena, you're good. We were chatting about this, I'm quite keen to bring some tools from more like self-assessment. I don't know if anyone's familiar with the Wheel of Life, where you look at your personal finances and your relationships and kind of all these different measures for how you would measure yourself, how you're thriving. And I want to apply a similar thing to our community. So one thing we were talking about was organic contributions. So number of community members who are doing things without grant payments or some other incentives. And that's showing that the system is working as intended, that people are kind of aligned to the end objective of overall community health versus individual gain. And I think there's a lot we can learn from like self-development there, so that we're not looking at like strictly just Twitter followers or people in Discord or a number of people holding the token, etc. And there was a I saw a question in the comments about how do you scale the one-on-one? And one thing that we've been talking about, we did some research with developers last December, and it was like access to the core team is like really important to also understand if the project is trustworthy. And so one of our like design principles from that is like scale the core team, like in quotes, is like how do you actually create, like we have an ambassador program and things like that, but it's like maybe it's like rotational programs. It's like how do you kind of instill the ethos and like principles and kind of like the structural foundation, and then let people do what may. But I think sometimes in Web3, like we're like, oh, the old system is crap, like let's just do the new one, and then we like tend not to have a lot of structure, and then I think that's where things go wrong. And you have to have some sort of like scaffolding for people to operate in. I was playing Monopoly this weekend, and I was like, this game is terrible. It's like just take. And then like 2 games in, I was like, I'm coming for you. It's like people adapt to the system that you put them in. And so you have to put enough structure so that incentives are aligned and people are kind of working together in a way that is towards the objective you're trying to achieve.
Yeah, I want to chime in here because I think like the nitty-gritty kind of tough part of community health is as your community becomes more diverse, how do you negotiate or manage people's different values or different incentives? So one of the coolest things about Web3 communities is that there's a much stronger incentive to be an active contributor versus like a passive consumer. So I'm not just scrolling through my Instagram feed. I'm not just kind of consuming memes as they're served to me. I'm really able to take agency and guide the project in a direction that I want it to go. The other side of that is that you might have a community that doesn't have 100% shared values. So some people are really motivated by a technological innovation. Other people are really motivated by social impact or real world use cases. And other people really just might be motivated for financial gain. Like this is an alternative asset class. It's really exciting. It's a new type of finance. And there's nothing wrong with wanting to invest in that. And so I think like one challenge to keep in mind with community health, and Vanessa kind of alluded to it, is like how do you create a scaffold that can align different types of incentives to kind of like an overall common objective or an overall common roadmap. And I think like the health of the community is, I love the metaphor of like comparing it to the health of a person. So there's some observable things you can see, like if you grow really fast, or if you're really, really tall, or if you're really, really loud, that might indicate that the community is doing very well. But it also might just indicate that the community is like on a sugar high, and eventually that isn't sustainable. And so something else might need to be kind of evaluated or explored. So yeah, I think like the tools, the one thing we haven't talked about on this question is governance and like how decisions get made as a group. And I think for a lot of communities, the fact that governance happens in public and everybody can see it and everybody can weigh in and chime in, that makes it really challenging, but also makes the system more resilient as a whole. I know we've probably all felt some of the growing pains of governance in our own communities. But I don't think that has to be kind of like the wart or the thing that we're ashamed of, like, oh, just because our community disagreed on a really important point, whether it be minors or a certain feature. The fact that there is healthy disagreement is a really good sign of the power of the community, in my opinion, even though like it gets hashed out on crypto Twitter or on headlines in ways that you might not want to see it.
But that's evolution, right? It just
Yeah, it's
You
painful,
go through the
it's
phases.
messy, but that's how you know it's working.
Exactly. Yep.
All right. Just very quickly, is there any KPI that you guys are using within your teams for measuring the health of the community, and what's that KPI, if there's any? Very quickly, just Elena, Lindsey, Vanessa, Amy, Simona.
Oh man,
any KPI?
Oof. It's that whole like, let's use Web 2 tools to measure the future. It's a little bit like, let's try to see if this works. I think the health of the community is definitely the way to do it, and I think being able to tap into those underlying measurements, not just how tall, how, just linking to what Elena said earlier, those very superficial metrics. Hey, we have 10,000 followers on Twitter. Hey, we have so many people in Telegram. What are those people talking about? What are the conversations? Are there things that you are seeing that people are using your project, your product, your protocol for, that is actually moving the needle in terms of leveling out the playing field, in terms of restoring human rights for people, the right to privacy, the right to transact, the right to access information without censorship and all of that jazz. That's the type of stuff that we should be focusing on. And maybe we need to, come up with a new set of metrics, call them something else. Web3 PIs. But yeah.
I love that, Simona. All right, just to be mindful of the time, the next question. Now that you have experienced it, how communities evolve so fast and so differently, what conclusions have you taken from this? We know that building communities is really, really tough. Are you optimist? Are you pessimist? Are we going to have a better world in our lifetime? Are we going to see global human coordination for making the world a better place? What are your takes on this?
I'm feeling really optimistic right now, honestly. But I'm open for the pessimist perspective because I think that we need to have that too. But I'm feeling really optimistic, especially this week. We had a lot of artists who were pretty successful right out of the gate at Foundation, and immediately they came back to lend a hand to new artists who are coming into the space, to place bids on their pieces, to talk to them, to educate them, give them tips. And just seeing that immediately happen was really encouraging. And I think we're just going to start to see even more of that. It's redesigning how culture works and helping creators really help each other. It's awesome. Very encouraging.
Yeah, I'm forever the optimist. It's going to happen. We're good. We're on the right track.
All right. Yeah, I'm also super optimistic, as you can see with my big smile. So yeah, thank you all for this beautiful conversation, and I hope to talk to you very soon.
Thank you.
Thanks everyone.
Ciao, ciao.